There was a woman named Iphia, and her story will break your heart. She was beautiful, gentle, and kind. Her eyes were bright like morning stars, and her smile once made people stop on the road. But behind that beauty, she carried a heavy sorrow. Her arms were always empty. Years passed after her marriage, but no child came to her. In the village, children were considered blessings, and a woman without children was often treated like dust. Iphia prayed day and night, she visited healers, she drank bitter herbs, and she cried under the moon, but still her womb remained silent. Her husband grew cold. He brought another woman into the house, a young girl full of life, and soon that girl gave him children. Laughter filled the house again, but it was not Iphia's laughter. She became like a shadow, forgotten in her own home. The children called the younger wife Mama, while Iphia sat alone in the corner. No one came to her hut. No one asked if she had eaten. Yet, in her heart, Iphia carried a small hope, weak but alive, that maybe the gods would remember her one day. One dark night, when the sky was heavy with stars, Iphia rose from her mat before dawn. It was her turn to cook for the whole family, and she had to fetch water early. She tied a scarf around her head, lifted her clay pot, and walked toward the river. The air was silent, too silent. No frogs croaked, no birds sang. Even the wind seemed to be holding its breath. Iphia felt a shiver run through her. Still, she walked on. When she reached the riverbank, she bent down to fill her pot. The water was strange that night, still as glass. She dipped the pot slowly, and just then, she heard it, a faint cry. Her heart jumped. She froze. She looked around. The riverbank was empty. No child, no woman, only darkness and water. She shook her head and told herself it was just her imagination. But as she lifted the heavy pot onto her head, the cry came again. This time it was louder, sharper, like a baby in pain. Iphia's hands trembled. She set the pot down quickly and leaned close. The sound was coming from inside the pot. Her eyes widened. Carefully, she bent down and peered into the water. And what she saw made her gasp so loudly that even the night seemed to echo back. Inside the pot, floating in the clear river water, was a tiny baby. But not an ordinary baby. This child had a soft, glowing face, shining like the moon. Her tiny arms reached up weakly, as if asking to be held. And instead of legs, she had a small silver tail, glittering under the stars. A mermaid baby. Iphia's mouth went dry. For a long moment, she just stared, unable to move. Then slowly, she reached her hands into the pot. The baby cried once more, but when Iphia lifted her out and pressed her against her chest, the crying stopped. The little one gave a soft, tired sigh and rested her head against Iphia's heart. Iphia's arms, which had been empty for so many years, finally held life. Warm, gentle, breathing life. Tears filled her eyes as she whispered, "Do not cry, my child. You are safe now. I will take care of you." She did not notice the faint ripples moving across the river. She did not see the soft glow rising deep beneath the waters, as if something ancient was watching her. She only felt one thing, her heart filling with a strange warmth, the warmth of motherhood she had longed for all her life. Wrapping the baby mermaid in her scarf, Iphia carried her home, her steps quick and her heart beating fast. She did not know what tomorrow would bring, but she knew one truth: for the first time in her life, her arms were no longer empty. Iphia reached her hut with the baby hidden under her scarf. Her heart was racing. She laid the child gently on a folded cloth. The baby gave a soft laugh, a sound so sweet that tears rolled down Iphia's cheeks. For many years she had been called barren, useless, cursed. But now, as she watched the little one close her eyes and fall asleep, Iphia felt like a true mother. She whispered to herself, "She is mine now. Mine." That morning, she still cooked for the family as expected. She woke before the cock crowed, prepared the yams, stirred the soup, and served everyone without a word. Her husband and the younger wife ate, their children laughing beside them. No one noticed the glow in Iphia's eyes, No one asked why she looked lighter than yesterday. They all left for the farm, and she returned to her hut where the baby was waiting. The child stirred and opened her eyes. They were bright, like drops of sunlight on water. Ifia lifted her and hummed an old lullaby she had not sung in years. The little silver tail moved gently against her arm. It felt strange but beautiful, like holding a piece of the river itself. From that day, Ifia's life changed. Every morning she cooked as always, but her real joy was hidden inside her hut. The baby mermaid laughed when Ifia sang, cooed when she rocked her, and smiled as if she belonged only to her. Ifia no longer felt alone. But strange things began to happen. The river, once strong and wide, began to shrink. At first, people thought it was the dry season. But soon, the water grew thinner and thinner, until even the women fetching water complained their pots were half empty. Fish disappeared, and the animals grew thirsty. At night, the village was no longer quiet. From far away, deep in the land, people heard a strange cry. It was not the cry of any bird or beast. It was long, heavy, and sorrowful, like a mother calling out for her child. Some said it came from the fields, others said from the river. But all agreed, it was not human. Ifia heard it too. And she began to dream. In her dreams, the river was alive. A tall glowing woman rose from its depths, her hair flowing like waves, her body shining like moonlit water. Her voice was deep, like thunder rolling across the sky. She pointed at Ifia with eyes full of fire and said, "Return my child. Return her, or you will bring ruin upon them all." Ifia would wake in the middle of the night, her body shaking. But each time, when she looked beside her and saw the little one smiling in her sleep, her heart melted. She could not let go. By day, she whispered to herself, "She is mine now. Mine." But by night, she heard the cry of the river mother. The sound was everywhere, in the wind, in the trees, even in her dreams. The villagers grew restless. They gathered at the riverbank, confused and afraid. Never in their lifetime had the river dried this way. Children cried for water. The elders shook their heads. Some spoke of angered spirits, some spoke of stolen things. But no one knew the truth. No one except Ifia. She sat quietly in her hut, cradling the baby mermaid, her heart torn between joy and fear. She loved the child more than anything in the world, yet she knew the River Queen's warning was real. Something was coming. And though she told herself again and again, "She is mine now," a small voice inside whispered another truth: "You cannot keep what belongs to the waters." The days passed, and the river continued to shrink. The villagers could no longer ignore it. What once was a wide, flowing stream was now a cracked bed of dry earth. Fish lay dead on the banks, their silver scales turning dull under the sun. Women walked farther and farther to find water, but even their pots came back half empty. Children cried from thirst, their lips dry and cracked. The men could not water the crops. The goats and cows stood weak, their ribs showing. Fear spread through the land like fire in dry grass. But it was the nights that frightened people the most. Every night, when darkness covered the village, the air filled with a haunting cry. It was not the sound of a child, nor the sound of a woman, but something in between. It rose from the ground, curled through the huts, and settled into people's bones. It was the cry of a grieving mother. Ifia heard it clearly. Sometimes she woke with sweat running down her face, clutching the mermaid baby to her chest. In her dreams, the glowing River Queen returned, pointing her finger and thundering, "Return my child, or ruin will fall upon you all." But Ifia could not. She kissed the baby's soft head, wiped her tears, and whispered, "You are mine. I will never let you go." The villagers gathered at the square to discuss the disaster. Mothers shouted about their thirsty children. Farmers complained about their dying crops. Hunters said the animals were fleeing deeper into the forest. Everyone argued, but no one had answers. Finally, the village head, an old man with a heavy face, stood up. He raised his hand, and the people grew quiet. Beside him stood the seer, the oldest man in the land, the one who spoke to the spirits. His eyes were white with age, and he carried a staff carved with ancient signs. The seer stepped forward, his voice deep and heavy. The river has turned away from us. The mother of the waters is angry. Someone among you has taken what belongs to her. The people gasped. A cold wind seemed to pass through the crowd. Taken what? Someone cried. Who has offended the spirits? Another shouted. The seer struck his staff on the ground. Her child. Someone has stolen the child of the river. That is why the waters have gone. That is why her cries haunt the night. Fear rose in every heart. People looked at one another with suspicion. Murmurs filled the air. Some pointed fingers at neighbors they disliked. Others accused the hunters of killing sacred animals. Mothers clutched their children, afraid of curses. But no one looked at Ifia. She sat quietly in the back, her eyes down, her arms folded. Inside, her heart pounded like a drum. She knew the seer's words were true. She had taken the baby. She was the reason the river was dry. Yet when she thought of giving the child back, her whole body shook. She remembered the empty years, the mocking laughter of her husband's other wife, the loneliness of her hut. And then she looked at the little mermaid's shining eyes, so full of love and trust. No, she told herself. She is mine. Mine. That night, the cries grew louder. They came not just from the river, but from every corner of the village. Some said they heard the wailing inside their huts, right by their beds. Children screamed in their sleep. The younger wife of Ifia's husband woke and said she saw a glowing figure standing at the doorway, its eyes burning with sorrow. The village was no longer at peace. Fear, anger, and suspicion grew each day. People fought over water, they blamed one another, and the land grew restless. Ifia held the baby close, rocking her gently. The child laughed softly, as if she knew nothing of the chaos around. But in Ifia's heart, the truth weighed heavier each day. She was living a stolen joy, and the river mother would not stay silent forever. The village was no longer the same. The once peaceful people now walked with fear in their eyes. Mothers clutched their children close. Men whispered in low voices. Everyone feared the anger of the river mother. Each night, the cry grew stronger. Sometimes it sounded like it came from the river. Sometimes it came from the trees. Other times, it felt like it rose from under the very ground they slept on. It was a cry of pain, of loss, of a mother searching for her baby. Ifia could not escape it. Even when she pressed her hands over her ears, the sound still reached her heart. And in her dreams, the mermaid queen returned again and again. The queen's glowing hair flowed like waves, her eyes like fire underwater. Her voice shook the ground as she said, "Return my child, Ifia. If you keep her, sorrow will drown your people." But Ifia always woke with the little one in her arms. The baby would smile, cooing like a bird. Her tiny silver tail curled against Ifia's skin, warm and soft. Each time, Ifia's heart melted. She whispered, "I cannot. You are mine now." But the village was watching. People began to notice small things. Strange light came from Ifia's hut at night, like silver fire. Some said they heard a baby's laugh from inside, even though everyone knew Ifia had never given birth. Others said they saw water dripping from her doorway, though no rain had fallen. The younger wife, jealous and sharp-tongued, began to whisper to the neighbors. "Why does Ifia no longer join us at the farm? Why does she hide all day in her hut? What secret is she keeping?" Suspicion grew like weeds. Women gossiped at the riverbank. Men muttered while sharpening their tools. Children pointed at her hut and dared each other to go near. One evening, as Ifia carried firewood back, she overheard two women whispering. "She is cursed," one said. "Yes," the other replied. "Perhaps she is the one who angered the river spirits." Ifia's hands shook, and the wood nearly fell from her arms. She hurried back to her hut, tears burning her eyes. Inside, she found the baby awake, laughing and reaching for her. The sight made Ephia's sorrow melt into joy again. She gathered the child into her arms and whispered, "Do not listen to them. You are mine. My own." But the truth was closing in. That night, the cries of the river mother were louder than ever. The whole village could not sleep. The younger wife woke screaming that she saw a tall glowing woman outside Ephia's hut. Others claimed they saw ripples of water spreading across the ground, leading toward Ephia's doorway. The next morning, people gathered and demanded answers. The village head called the seer again. The seer lifted his staff and said, "The mother of the river searches for her child. The one who has taken the baby hides among us still. The spirits will reveal the thief soon." Ephia's heart pounded like a drum. Her secret was heavy, too heavy to carry. She wanted to speak, to confess, but when she looked at the baby in her arms, her lips could not move. The child gazed up at her with eyes so full of trust, as if saying, "Do not leave me." The village grew restless. Some began to blame Ephia openly. Others only whispered. But she could feel the eyes watching her, sharper each day. Inside her hut, Ephia rocked the baby and hummed softly. But deep inside, she knew the truth. She was living on borrowed time. The River Queen would not wait forever, and the village would not stay blind much longer. The village woke one morning to a sky heavy with clouds. The air was thick and hot, as if even the wind was afraid to move. The elders looked at the sky with worry, for they knew when the river mother was angry, storms followed. That night, it began. The first sound was thunder, loud enough to shake the huts. Then the river rose without warning. Waves crashed against the banks, water spilling into the farms. People ran, shouting, "The spirits are angry. The river mother is coming for us." Rain poured down like arrows. Roofs leaked. The ground turned to mud. Goats and chickens cried out as water swept through the village. Families clutched each other, terrified. But it was not only the flood. The cries came too, louder than before, closer than ever. It was no longer a distant wail. Now it sounded like a scream at their very doorsteps. "Give me back my child," the voice roared in the storm. The people fell to their knees in fear. Some cried, "We will all die if the child is not returned." Others began pointing at Ephia's hut. Whispers grew into shouts. "She is hiding something. The spirits point to her." Ephia sat in her hut, the baby pressed tightly to her chest. The child did not cry. Instead, she smiled at Ephia with innocent eyes, unaware of the storm outside. Ephia's tears mixed with rainwater dripping from the roof. Her heart was torn apart. She whispered, "My little one, they will take you from me. But how can I let you go? Without you, I am nothing." The storm grew wilder. Lightning flashed, and for a moment, Ephia saw a tall figure in the rain, the glowing woman again. The Mermaid Queen. Her hair floated like waves, her arms stretched toward Ephia's hut. Her voice thundered through the rain. "Ephia, do not test me. Return my child, or your people will drown." The whole village heard it. Children screamed. Men clutched their spears but dared not move. Women hid their faces in their cloths. Everyone turned toward Ephia's hut, trembling. The younger wife shouted, "She is the one. She has stolen the child of the river." The crowd surged forward. Some demanded that Ephia open her hut. Others begged the elders to save them before the flood destroyed everything. The seer raised his staff and spoke with a trembling voice, "If the baby is not returned tonight, the village will be swallowed by water. The spirits have spoken." Ephia's heart beat fast. She held the child tighter. The baby cooed and touched Ephia's cheek with her tiny hand. That small touch burned through Ephia's soul. Could she really let go? Could she really give up the only joy she had ever known? The villagers began to chant, louder and louder. "Give her back. Give the child to the river. Save us." But Ephia stayed frozen, trapped between love and fear. Suddenly, the flood pushed harder. Water entered her hut, rising fast around her legs. The baby laughed, splashing her little tail in the water as if she belonged there. Iphia realized then that no matter what she wanted, the child was not hers to keep. Her tears fell like rain as she whispered, "Forgive me, my daughter. Forgive me for loving you too much." Outside, the water swirled like a whirlpool. The glowing figure of the Mermaid Queen appeared again, taller and brighter than before. The whole village gasped in awe and terror. The Queen's voice echoed, "Bring her to me now, or all shall perish." Iphia stood, her knees weak, the child still in her arms. The time for hiding was over. The floodwater kept rising, climbing from the ground to the knees, then to the waists of the villagers. Children cried as their mothers lifted them high. Goats bleated, chickens flapped helplessly, and huts began to shake as if they would fall apart. The Mermaid Queen's glowing figure stood in the storm, her hair like waves of fire and her eyes shining with sorrow and anger. Her voice rolled over the thunder. "Iphia, my patience is gone. Return my child now." All eyes turned to Iphia's hut. The people shouted louder than the rain. "She is the thief. She is the reason the spirits are angry. Give the child back." Iphia's heart beat like a drum inside her chest. She held the little one tightly. The baby looked at her with calm eyes, as if the storm meant nothing. The child touched her face and made a small sound, soft like music. That small sound almost broke Iphia's soul. She whispered, "You are my daughter. I have nothing else. If I let you go, my hands will be empty again. My heart will be empty forever." But outside, the cries of the villagers grew desperate. Some men tried to reach her hut. The younger wife screamed, "If she will not give the child back, we must take her by force." Iphia's hands shook. She knew if she stayed silent, they would break into her hut. They would tear the baby from her arms and throw her into the flood. And if that happened, the spirits might still punish everyone. The seer's voice rose above the chaos. "Iphia, hear me. The child belongs to the river. If you do not return her with your own hands, the spirits will never forgive us. You must choose love for one or life for all." The words stabbed into her chest. She looked down at the baby again. The child smiled, her little silver tail flicking as though she longed to go back to the water. Iphia's tears poured like the rain. For a moment, she wished time would stop. That she could hold the baby forever in her arms. That the river mother would forget her demand. But the storm grew louder. Lightning split the sky. The earth trembled under their feet. Iphia knew there was no escape. Slowly, she stood. Water swirled around her knees. She wrapped the baby in the cloth she had sewn herself, the only gift she could give. She kissed the child's forehead and whispered, "My love will always be with you. Even in the river, even in the spirits, you will carry me." When she stepped out of her hut, the whole village went silent. The people saw her holding the child, and their anger turned into shock. Mothers wept. Men bowed their heads. Even the younger wife fell silent. Iphia walked through the water, her eyes on the glowing queen. Each step felt like walking on knives. The baby laughed softly, as if she knew she was going home. At last, Iphia stood before the river mother. The queen's eyes softened when she saw her child. She stretched out her arms, her voice trembling like waves. "Give her to me, Iphia. You have done what many would not. You have loved her as your own." Iphia pressed the baby close one last time. Her tears fell onto the cloth. Then, with shaking hands, she placed the child into the queen's arms. The storm stopped. The rain slowed. The thunder faded into silence. The river calmed as if nothing had ever happened. The villagers gasped in awe. Some dropped to their knees, praising the spirits. Others sobbed in relief. The younger wife hid her face in shame. But Iphia stood alone, her arms empty, her heart broken. She had saved her people, but she had lost her only joy. The queen looked at Iphia with deep eyes. "Your love was pure. This sacrifice will not be forgotten." Then she sank into the water with her child, and the river swallowed them whole. The river was calm again. The storm had ended, and the village was safe. The people breathed with relief, but their eyes were full of shame. They had pointed fingers, shouted, and nearly torn Ifea apart. Yet it was she who had saved them all by giving up the child she loved. Ifea returned to her hut, but her home felt empty. The baby's laughter was gone. The soft sound of her tiny tail splashing was gone. Only silence remained. Ifea lay on her mat, her arms aching as if they still longed to hold the child. 4 days, she stayed quiet. She worked in the farm, cooked her food, fetched her water, but her heart was heavy. Some villagers tried to comfort her. They said, "You are brave, Ifea. You saved us all." But their words could not fill the emptiness inside her. Then, one night, something happened. Ifea was asleep when she heard a soft song. It was not the cry of sorrow but a sweet lullaby that rose from the river. She opened her eyes and followed the sound. The moonlight was bright, and the river shone like silver. There, on the water, stood the mermaid queen once more. But this time, she was not angry. She smiled, her eyes warm, her arms cradling the child. The baby laughed, her little tail splashing joyfully. The queen called out, "Ifea, do not weep. You loved my daughter as your own, and for that, I bless you. The river has seen your heart." Ifea stepped closer, her eyes wide with tears. She whispered, "I miss her. Every breath I take feels empty without her." The queen nodded. "Love is never wasted. What you gave her will live forever. And because of your sacrifice, you shall never be forgotten. From today, the river will be your friend. You will never suffer hunger or thirst again." As she spoke, the water at Ifea's feet shimmered. Fish leapt from the river as if offering themselves. The land near her hut grew green with crops overnight. Her farm bore fruits larger than any seen before. Goats and cows multiplied around her compound. The people of the village saw it with their own eyes. They marveled and said, "Ifea is blessed by the river spirit. She gave up her child, and now the spirits reward her." From that day, Ifea was no longer seen as the barren wife or the lonely woman. She became the mother of the village. Children ran to her hut, and she fed them. Women came to her farm, and she shared her harvest. Men came to her home for advice, and she spoke with wisdom. Though her arms no longer held the baby, her heart held the love of many. And when she walked by the river, the water would sometimes sparkle, and she would hear the faint laugh of the little one. She knew then that love had not been lost, it had only changed. Years later, the story of Ifea was told at every fire in the village. Elders would say, "Remember the woman who gave up her child to save us all. Remember that sacrifice brings blessings. Remember that love, even when painful, can open the way to honor." And so, Ifea lived on in the memory of her people, not as a woman of sorrow, but as a mother of blessings. Sparkles, sparkles. Dear listener, if this story touched your heart, do not forget love and sacrifice bring blessings, even when the road is hard. Share this tale with your friends, keep it alive in your homes, and let it remind you that no good deed is ever wasted.